Tonight, a warm story from an old workshop where bells were made, about an old master, the boy he had taught for years, and the night he let him pour the new bell himself, and the long, warm dark they sat out together, waiting for it to cool. Late at night, in the old workshop where the bells were made, the metal was nearly ready, and the whole place glowed with the light of the fire. The great melting fire stood in the middle of the floor, banked up hot and red, and in the heart of it, the bronze was melting, the copper and the tin together, going from hard, dull metal to a thick, bright liquid, slow, over the long evening, until now it sat in its great pot in the fire, glowing the colour of the sun. Everything in the workshop took its light from that fire. The dark beams overhead, the racks of tools, the old brick of the walls, the faces of the two who stood waiting. All of it washed warm and gold and red by the glow. And beyond the reach of it, the rest of the workshop fell away into a soft, warm dark. It was very hot and very still, and full of the low roar of the fire and the slow, steady breath of the bellows that fed it. In a corner, well back from the heat, the workshop cat slept on a sack, untroubled, as it slept every night. In the floor, near the fire, was the mould. It was buried, sunk down into a pit in the earth of the floor, and packed round tight with sand, with only its open top showing at floor level, a dark, round mouth waiting to be filled. Down inside it, hidden in the ground, was the shape of the bell. The hollow form of it, built up of clay over the long weeks, every line and curve of the bell to be held in the dark of the packed earth, waiting now for the metal to come and make it real. Old Anton, the master, stood by the fire and watched the metal, the way he had watched it on hundreds of nights across a long life of making bells. And beside him stood the boy, Bram, who had been his apprentice for years, who had swept this floor and carried this metal and worked these bellows and watched this master pour bell after bell, learning it all with his eyes and his hands, a little more each time. Bram thought, as he always did, that he was here tonight to help, and to watch, and to hand the master what he needed. He did not yet know that tonight was to be different. For tonight the master meant to let the boy pour. He had taught him for years, slow and patient, the way the old crafts are taught, not in words mostly, but by showing, and by letting the boy do a little more each season as his hands grew ready. Bram had begun by sweeping and carrying. Then he had been let to feed the fire, and then to help build the moulds, and then, last year, to mix the metal. And the master had watched him all that time, more closely than the boy ever knew, watched his hands and his patience and the care he took and the way he never rushed the thing in front of him, and had decided, quietly, some while ago, that the boy was ready and that the next bell would be his to pour. He had not told him. He was not a man for announcements, And he knew, too, that a thing told too far ahead only grows heavy with the waiting. So he had said nothing, and let the evening come on like any evening, and let the boy think he was only there to help. Until now, with the metal glowing ready in the fire, and the mold open and waiting in the floor, when the master simply turned to him and put the long pouring ladle into his hands and said, in his low, even voice, "You pour it tonight." Bram looked at him. For a moment he did not understand, and then he did, and his breath caught. He pour it. The real bell, the bronze, the thing you could not take back or do again, pour it himself. He looked at the master to see if he truly meant it, and the master looked back at him, calm as the deep night, and did not take the ladle away. "You're ready," the old man said. "I've watched you. Go on." And he stepped back. Actually stepped back, half a pace, out of the place beside the mold where he had stood to pour every bell of his long life, and left the place open for the boy to step into. And the boy, after a moment, with his heart loud and his hands very careful, stepped into it. Then the boy poured the bell. He did it the way he had watched it done 100 times, and the way his hands, it turned out, already knew. He brought the great pot of metal up from the fire, the master there to help him with the weight of it, but the boy guiding it, the boy in charge of it now, and he tipped it, slow and steady, over the open mouth of the mold. And the bronze ran out. It ran out of the lip of the pot in a thick, bright rope of liquid fire, the colour of the sun itself, almost too bright to look at, and it ran down into the dark mouth of the mold and was gone, pouring away into the hidden shape of the bell below the floor. The light of it filled the whole workshop, brighter than the fire. A great soft gold flare thrown up the walls and across the dark beams, and over the two faces bent above the pour. It was the most beautiful thing the boy had ever seen. The metal ran like liquid sun, smooth and certain, down into the earth, filling the hidden bell, and the heat of it came up into his face, and he held the pour steady and even, and did not let his hands shake, because the master had taught him not to, and because the master's hand had come to rest, just then, on his shoulder, light and steady and sure. The master said almost nothing. Once, low, steady, and once, good. Keep it coming. And that was all, because that was all the boy needed. The metal poured and filled, and the mold took all of it. Every drop of the bright bronze running down into the dark to fill the shape that had waited weeks for it. And then the pot was empty, and the boy tipped it back upright, and the pour was done. The bright rope of fire stopped. The great flare of light sank back. And there, in the floor, the round mouth of the mold stood full to the top with bronze, glowing, settling, ticking very faintly as it stood. The bell poured and made was done, and it was good. The boy stood and looked at the full mould, his face still hot from it, his breath only now catching up with him, and a feeling rose in him that he had no name for. Not quite pride, though there was pride in it, but something larger and quieter. The feeling of having done, with his own 2 hands, a real thing, a thing that would last, a thing that could not be undone and had not needed to be. The master looked at the full mould too, and then he looked at the boy, which, in truth, he had been doing more than watching the metal all along. And he nodded, once, slow, and said, "That's a good pour." From the old master, who did not give his praise lightly, that was a very great deal. Then he covered the top of the mould over against the cold night air, to let the bell cool slow and even in its bed of earth, the way a bell must be let to cool, with no hurry at all, for that is the whole secret of it. Cooled slow and patient, down there in the dark. The bronze comes out whole and true, and will ring clear for hundreds of years. And then there was nothing more to do but wait. The work was finished. The pour was poured. The bell was made. It had only to cool now, slowly, down in the dark earth, all through the night. And that could not be hurried, and ought not to be. So the 2 of them, the old master and the boy who was a bell maker now, banked the great fire down low for the night, and drew 2 stools up near the warm covered mould, and sat down together to wait out the long night while the new bell cooled. And it was a good night to sit out. The workshop was warm. It would stay warm all night, with the banked fire and the great cooling bell giving off their heat into the dark room. And it was quiet now. The roar of the fire sunk to a soft red murmur, the bellows still. The night settled deep and close around the small glow of the 2 of them. Outside, the town slept. In here, they sat by the warm mould in the low light and waited. And there was nowhere either of them had to be but here. They did not talk much. They never had needed to. But somewhere in the deep of the night, the master, looking into the coals, told the boy, quietly, the way you tell a thing across a fire late at night, about his own first pour 50 years before, how his own master had stood behind him then with a hand on his shoulder, the very same as he had stood tonight, and how that man had been taught the same way by another before him, back and back, a long line of hands passing the craft down, one trusted boy at a time, all the way to this boy, here, tonight. The bell they had poured was only the newest in a long line of bells going back further than any of them could count, and the boy was only the newest in a long line of makers. And there was a deep, warm comfort in that, in being one more careful pair of hands in a long chain of them, and the boy felt it settle quietly into him as he sat there in the warm. And below them, all the while, in the dark earth under the floor, the new bell cooled They could not see it. It was hidden, the way it had been hidden all along, taking its shape in the dark. But they could feel its warmth coming up through the floor, and now and then hear it tick, very faint, as the bronze drew slowly in on itself and hardened and became, hour by hour, a bell. A real bell that would be lifted out into the light in the morning and hung in its tower, and would ring out over the valley for longer than any of them would live. The night wore slowly down toward morning. The fire sank to a bed of soft red coals, and the warmth held, and the boy's eyes grew heavy, and once or twice his head nodded. The master told him, low, to sleep if he wanted. There was no need for them both to watch. But the boy did not want to sleep. He wanted to sit out the whole of it, this first night, beside the first bell that was truly his, with the master there beside him. And so he stayed awake, warm and tired and content, and watched the coals and felt the warm bell cooling under the floor, and was, without quite having the word for it, happy. Toward the very end of the night, when the first grey light began to come in at the high windows, and the first birds started up outside, the master reached over and put his hand once more on the boy's shoulder, not to steady him this time, for there was nothing left to do, but only to leave it there a moment, the way you do with someone you are glad of. And the boy understood from it, without a word said, that he had done well, and that he was trusted, and that in this one warm night he had crossed quietly over from the boy who watched to the man who made. They sat on as the light came up, the two of them, by the warm dying fire and the cooling bell, in no hurry to move, while the workshop filled slowly with the soft grey of the dawn, and the new bell rested, made and whole, and very nearly cool now, in the dark, warm earth below, waiting for the morning, and the lifting, and the long, bright life of ringing that was to come. The workshop warm and dim and quiet, the fire sunk to soft red coals, the old master and the boy who was a maker now sitting on beside the cooling bell, the first grey light at the high windows, the first birds in the dark outside, and the new bell resting whole in the warm, dark earth below, poured by careful, trusted hands, waiting only for the morning to lift it up into the light and ring